Good afternoon. We are pleased to take part in the second international conference on sustainable features, environmental, technological, social and economic matters. Allow me to briefly introduce myself, my colleagues and the research presented at this conference. Research on the topic: determining the parameters of shunting locomotive taking into account the environmental component, which conducted by scientific experts Olha Kletska, Anatoliy Falendysh, Dmitro Ivanchenko, Department of Transport Technologies of Enterprises, Berezovsky State Technical University, Mariupol, Ukraine, in conjunction with scientists Jean Dizo and Kateryna Kravchenko, Department of Transport and Handling Machines, University of Žilina, Slovakia. The paper analyzed the condition of the rolling stock of Ukrzaliznytsia, which showed that more than 50% of its fleet are shunting locomotives, 98% of which operate beyond their service life. A more detailed analysis is presented on the slide. Thus, shunting locomotives with up to 25 years of service account for 4%, up to 40 years 26%, and up to 50 years of service account for 70%. Also, the analysis of diesel locomotives operation on different modes of operation was performed. It showed that in the nominal mode the diesel locomotive works 2% of the operation time, in the transient modes 43%, and in the idle mode 45%. Due to the fact that quite acute is the issue of ecology both in the world and in Ukraine, and analysis of emissions of pollutant and in the atmospheric air by stationary and mobile sources of energy was made. Fundamental research in this direction was and is being carried out in scientific organizations, especially such as Berezovsky State Technical University, Dnipropetrovsky National University's Railway Transport, etc. In connection with the lack of works in the field of selection of technical and economic characteristics of shunting locomotives with hybrid power transmission, with consideration of real operation conditions and ecological component, there is a scientific necessity in development of approaches, methods and models for selection of technical and economic characteristics of shunting locomotives with hybrid power transmission. At that, it is necessary to take into account real operating conditions and environmental indicators. Further, measures were proposed to reduce the cost of penalties on emissions from diesel locomotives, which were divided into the two groups. These are organizational, technological, and constructive. In addition, each measure is characterized by criteria, with environment aspect, cost criterion of modernization, operating cost criterion of the effect of implementation, criterion from the duration of implementation. Taking into account the fact that the task is multi-criteria, the choice of measure is performed by additive optimization method by criterion. The calculation results show that it is advisable to modernize the locomotive with new power units in elements of energy-saving devices. When assessing the environmental component in the operation of shunting locomotives, the result of environmental and energy tests conducted by employees of the Industry Research Laboratory in the period from 2013 to 2020 were taken into account. The tests were conducted both on modernized diesel locomotives such as Poltava Locomotive Repair Plant and on locomotives built in the 1970s and 1980s. There are a Kriholden Bria and the original branch of Penetinsky Railroad Car Repair Plant. The result of the test are presented on the slide, which showed that the longer the service life of the locomotive, the greater the increase in pollutant emissions. Further, the varieties of power chain of hybrid locomotives were considered and a model of the power chain of a hybrid shunting locomotives were proposed using the expert method, which is presented on this slide. Guided by the European experience of environmental taxation, the target function for determining the technical and economic performance of the locomotive included the costs of the environmental damage the cost of energy storage, and the cost of maintenance and repair. Following this, the model for determining the rational, technical, and economic indicators of a hybrid shunting locomotive was improved, which takes into account the environmental component. The basic equations are presented on slide 7. The work also formalized the technology of shunting locomotive design improvement by determining the rational, technical, and economic indicators, a generalized scheme of which consists of a model for determining the rational parameters of the power plant and energy storage unit, which takes into account speed limitations, operating conditions, cost, indicators of the power plant, and its maintenance and repair. After determining the rational parameters of the power plant and energy storage unit, we determine the parameters of the power plant, and then, according to known methods, we make a calculation of the technical and economic characteristics of the locomotive. The procedure of determination is present on this slide. Following this, the software complex for determining the parameters of the storage and power unit of a hybrid shunting locomotive was improved using MathCAD. As a result of calculation, the dependence of energy capacity of the energy storage unit with appropriate limitations and cost indicators of modernization on the power of the selected power plant for a given mode of operation is obtained. According to the software package for determining the parameters of power transfer of a hybrid shunting locomotive, the external characteristic of the generator was built, and the traction characteristic of the locomotive was constructed. The evaluation of the efficiency of shunting locomotives is proposed to be determined by an appropriate coefficient, which includes the technical level of the locomotive, the life cycle cost, and the environmental component. The assessment of the technical level of the hybrid shunting locomotive is proposed to be determined by the known methodology, the algorithm of which is shown on slide 11. Among the nomenclature of indicators characteristics the shunting locomotive when performing shunting work, we propose to take into account the power and energy capacity of the energy storage unit. Thus, the technical level of shunting locomotives, which a hybrid unit was determined, the life cycle cost of MEF3 and hybrid-based diesel locomotives, and the calculation of the economic component. As a result of the calculations, the coefficient of efficiency when using diesel locomotives for shunting operation for the basic diesel locomotive is 1. For the modernized diesel locomotive with the basic engine and energy storage unit is 1.13, and for the modernized one with the new diesel engine and energy storage unit is 1.4. On this slide are the conclusions. Please read them. Thank you for your attention.